All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Elliot Wareham. I am a transportation planner at the COG. I have been in contact with most of you. I've been kind of the one who's been project managing the active transportation plan. I'm really excited to finally have all of you here to be on the project advisory committee and kind of get this thing started. So the first thing I was hoping we could do would be to kind of go around and introduce all the members, kind of your name, who you are, what you do, and your interests in active transportation. Yeah. So.
Would you like me to start?
Yeah, so anybody can start.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rich Donovan. I'm the Director of Transportation Planning here for NVCOG. Go down this way.
Officer Christian Clues, certified bike officer for Waterbury Police, 20 years now. I ride most of my days on the beat.
Nice.
Hi, Heidi Cornell, Communications Associate at NVCOG.
Aaron Butters, I'm the Environmental Planning Director at NVCOG.
Tayo Olale, I'm a transportation planner at NVCOG.
You probably direct the order online.
Yeah.
It gets confusing.
Let me see. The first person I see on my screen is Jack Walsh. So if you can get started.
Yeah, Jack Walsh from Derby, about with the Derby Greenway and also the Naugatuck River Greenway.
Yeah, you guys call people.
Yeah, I'll just keep calling everybody. Next person I see is Anna Dorogazi.
Hi, I'm Anna Dorgazi. I'm the Advocacy and Outreach Director at AARP Connecticut.
Jerry, I see you next.
Good morning, Jerry Lukowski, Director of Public Works for Watertown. Love the Valley, grew up in the Valley, and just retired 36 years with the Army Corps of Engineers. And my first rail to trail was 1994 up in Bolton Notch in Vernon. Thank you.
All right. I see Amy next.
Good morning, Amy Watkins from Watch For Me CT, which is a bicycle and pedestrian safety campaign of the Department of Transportation and Connecticut Children's.
All right, thank you. Then we have Jim Jinks.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, Jim Jinks from Cheshire. We're a couple different hats here. I started our local bike walk advocacy group and also serve on our town council.
And then we have Sheila O'Malley.
Hi, good morning. Sheila O'Malley, Economic Development Director for the city of Ansonia, and a consultant for the town of Seymour as well. Been involved with a lot of river trails, greenway paths, and bike petty paths, so very interested in this stuff.
All right, then I see Chris Roberts, DOT.
Hi, Chris Roberts, Connecticut DOT Project Coordination Unit. Sitting in for Anna Bergeron, who's the Bike and Pedestrian Coordinator.
Great to have you. Let's see. Then I see Jane Dunbar, DOT.
Hi, Jane Dunbar with the CTDOT. I'm in Intergovernmental Affairs.
All right, then lastly, we have, I think that's lastly, Mary.
I believe she did an introduction via the chat.
Via chat, wonderful.
And Desiree.
Great to have you. Oh, Desiree, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning. Oh, trying to multitask, but that's okay. So good morning. My name is Desiree Blanchard, and I'm the Communications and Community Engagement Coordinator for NVCOG.
All right, it is great to have everybody here. I am going to go into just a brief overview of what the active transportation plan will entail, a timeline, that kind of thing. But what we really want the meat of this meeting to be. We'd like it to be productive and meaningful, so I will, after I present about it, I will turn the discussion over to everybody else, and I have some prompts where we can begin to think about some of the goals and how to make active transportation implementable within the NVCOG region. All right, so why active transportation? Why is this important? The main reason, I mean, I'm sure all of you are active transportation advocates, so you know why it's important, but one of the main reasons that we think it's important is because of mobility equity, which we define as mobility for all ages, abilities, incomes, and from anywhere to everywhere. And this is especially important now as people need and want other alternatives to get around besides having to take a car to go everywhere. And Rich was telling me this morning, our region apparently actually has a less than average regular access to a motor vehicle, and specifically the city of Waterbury has a far less than average access to a motor vehicle race. So it's really important that we can provide equitable mobility for all people in our region. And I also just listed some other the common reasons why people tout active transportation. Has got health, climate, economic benefits, and of course reduces auto dependency. So what is actually going to be in the active transportation plan? It will provide information about some of the existing conditions of active transportation in the region, including a safety analysis supporting some of our Vision Zero and Complete Streets work, which we'll use to then provide recommendations and guidelines for future active transportation projects, which might include specific projects as well as just design guidelines that our municipalities can kind of take into account as they are considering and building active transportation projects. In addition, we'll hopefully provide some municipal policy recommendations to better facilitate active transportation because it doesn't happen in a vacuum, so we'll need things like land use, enforcement, education to kind of tie to some of the more specific transportation recommendations. And we will include a list of prioritized active transportation projects in the region, which will hopefully set some of our towns up for success when they're applying for grants and kind of going forward with some of these projects. I sent around a brief scope, maybe not brief, I sent around a scope and outline in addition to this meeting that I don't know if anybody had a chance to take a quick look at, but in that outline, we listed some of the initial goals of the active transportation plan, which we can kind of hopefully workshop today. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's about 12, but if you can just like take a quick look, and it's a lot of the stuff I already said. So like assessing the current environment, meaningful placemaking, complete streets policy, as well as Vision Zero, and kind of making sure that we are doing our part to engage the community and make sure that this plan is actually implementable instead of just, you know, just another piece of paper thrown out into the ether. We want to actually make some meaningful change with our plan. And to go into the estimated project timeline, this summer we started with the preliminary steps, so creating the scope, outline, timeline of the plan, and then this fall we began to work on some of the existing conditions for the plan. And of course, we formed the project advisory committee, and we're also beginning to prepare for some public engagement, which will hopefully begin this winter. We've drafted a survey and we're planning to attend community meetings, both some kind of civic organizations as well as some municipal councils and commissions if possible. We've talked about hosting a charrette in the spring, as well as any walk audits or hosting events at some of our existing active transportation facilities to kind of just engage the community as much as possible and raise awareness about active transportation. So hopefully next summer 2024, that will result in the first draft of the plan for review, and hopefully by the fall we will be able to publish our final draft and have it approved by our board. Okay, so like I said, I wanted to turn it all over to you, but first, Rich, do you have anything to add that I might have missed in the presentation?
No, I think we're in it's an exciting time to be doing this. You know, we're, as a region, we have certainly our challenges, right? We're not exactly flat or easy to get around via active transportation. And we have some an aging infrastructure that presents challenges. But at the same time, that aging infrastructure presents the opportunity for us to really do something innovative here and make this a great region for walking and biking and micromobility devices. And with new technology, you know, electronic assisted bikes and scooters, and there's a lot happening that really set the region up right now to be in a great spot for this. You know, we've got some really strong projects underway already with the Naugatuck River Greenway, connecting, you know, north-south through our region, plus some spur trails that exist already. Here in Waterbury, there's some great work going on in the area in and around downtown. And we know that, you know, our downtown areas present the best opportunity to get started with this, and we can spread infrastructure out from that to better connect neighborhoods and residents to the services and civic functions that they need access to. And so we really appreciate you all being here and working with us on this. And we're hoping that this will be something that can really be transformative for the way people get around the region.
All right, so I've thrown a few discussion prompts on the screen. We don't have to like systematically go through these, but just some things to think about. So what are the goals for active transportation in the Naugatuck Valley region? What should active transportation look like in the Naugatuck Valley region? And importantly, what are ways to ensure these goals are actually implementable? And what are ways that we can engage stakeholders, the public and elected officials, because that is kind of a crux of a lot of this work, is to ensure that there's a political will behind everything. So yeah, if anybody just wants to get started, if they have any thoughts about, maybe we can start at the top with what are some of the goals for active transportation?
I can start and say we need more of it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know what, you know, in a region like ours, and I say ours, I know Cheshire very well. I know the Valley a little bit, but you guys know it better than I do, and some of the people on the call know it better than I do. But you know, being in a suburban community where, you know, we don't have rail access, convenient rail access, we barely have bus access. You know, the thought, one thought is, you know, what should the goals be in terms of, you know, how much perhaps we increase the use of bikes, you know, around town, you know, to and from the trail. And we have the Farmington Canal Trail, which kind of goes north and south in town. You know, here, I think we want to, you know, it was kind of mentioned earlier, we want to have, you know, that is sort of a spine, and have a lot of, you know, kind of spur routes off of that to get people to and from the trail, so that you can then actually go from town to town on the trail, and then also perhaps a route to, you know, to Meriden or something to go to the train station or something like that. But you know, as far as a goal, it's hard to say. You know, if we were to get, you know, 5% of people commuting by bike from Cheshire, that seems like that would be a, you know, a home run. But I'm not sure what sort of region wide, I'm not sure what's, you know, hopefully the number would be higher than that.
And just the follow up from Jim, what are their goals besides greenways? Of course, Jim mentioned buses. Is there any other goals besides greenways and buses?
Yeah, you know, I think for what it's worth, the Greenway concept is pretty well established around here, right? We have the plan for the Naugatuck River Greenway and the Farmington Canal that goes through Cheshire. We have spur routes that are either in place already and need to just get connected or planned. And so, you know, I think the greenways are an important like centerpiece of the active transportation system, but they are only recreation if you can't get to them. And so it's that local road, the connection between the greenways and where people live and where people need to go. That I think is one of the key things we're looking at here.
Okay.
I'll just chime in really quick from DOT's perspective. Yeah, I mean, I think looking at this from a transportation sense and then really having the recreational component be kind of a secondary, I'll say term. I mean, you really should be looking at these, not necessarily in a recreational sense, but you know, these greenways or multi-use trails are that's really your highways, right? This is your highways for bicycle infrastructure. So, and then, you know, if you looked at each, you know, go look at any crossing from a trail left and right, and like, what do you see? Like, are you going to bike on that, you know, on any of those cross sections? Because I mean, some of them are going to be pretty scary. So, I mean, this is where we want to try to emphasize that as much as we can. And I'll also say integration into DOT's plan, which I'm sure you guys are already doing and would do. But you know, linking what we have in terms for trail and either on roads routes. You know, we're doing kind of a lengthy exercise ourselves at updating our plan and our map to look at more state route systems as well. So we're going to be trying to tackle some of the state roads in conjunction with what you guys do at a regional and local level.
And that's especially important. You know, most of the services and the destinations people want to go to are located on state roads. And so we could have the best system on every local road, and it makes no difference if you can't ride on the state roads or walk on the state roads, or, you know, whatever device you choose to use.
Right.
Yeah, and also just Kevin, we had done introductions at the beginning. If you want to do just a quick introduction of who you are.
Yeah, sorry, I was a little late. Kevin Tedesco I supervise the Intergovernmental Affairs Unit, and then just as a side note, I led the Complete Streets practice for a consultant for about 6 years. So this stuff is kind of near and dear for me.
Cool, thank you.
You know, I was thinking about the connection with trains. You mentioned the trains. We have the Greenway running north and south from Torrington to Derby. We have the trains running, but there's no connection between bikers and trains. Let's suppose you you lived in Derby and you worked in Waterbury. You're not going to bike to Waterbury every day, but you might take the train to Waterbury. And if you could get your bike on the train, you might then commute from your house to the train station to work. I've seen that when I was out in Ohio. The trains were designed to carry the bikes. You know, we see that on buses. I don't know if there's any connection at all with trains.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I regularly take the train up here to Waterbury, and I would love to someday be able to take the train uphill and then ride back downhill at the end of the day.
Yeah, get the bike on the train.
Exactly. You want to pull the goal slides back up?
Yeah, I can
run through what we've got so far just to make sure that it aligns with what everyone's thinking here.
All right, I can run through some of the goals that we already had that kind of glazed over in the presentation. So one, assess the current environment for non-motorized travelers, identify the region's strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities for those traveling by a non-motorized transportation mode. To identify and address missing links in the active transportation network and improve access to activity centers, schools, parks, and transit, first mile, last mile, which is I kind of think what some of you were just hinting at there. Provide connections to existing and planned off-road trail network, which is another thing that just came up. Explain the importance of active transportation to meaningful placemaking. Provide an active transportation facility selection guide, helping our municipalities use context-sensitive planning to implement the correct facility. provide regional guidance on pedestrian and cyclist safety and comfort issues, adopt a regional complete streets policy to ensure all users are considered and accommodated in any project. The working towards a Vision Zero policy, engaging stakeholders from all areas of local and regional government, engaging the community to identify active transportation priorities for all ages and abilities. This is one that I am intrigued by and am wondering if anybody has any thoughts on creating a lasting community organization for the long-term implementation and updates of the active transportation plan, which is something that you mentioned that New Haven did that, right? The New Haven.
Yeah, so there's, all across the state, there are groups that advocate for this, and, Bike Chester is a great example. But the Naugatuck+Valley region itself is kind of lacking in community advocacy around active transportation. And as much as we can do as government and as much as our towns can do, without an active user base and without advocacy groups within each of our towns and cities, it can be difficult for the cities to see the benefit as well as have the political support to be able to make some of these changes.
And then ensure that the needs of all non-motorized and electrically assisted micromobility users are considered as street users and that proper facilities exist for their safety and comfort. And then lastly, ensure that the active transportation infrastructure goals as identified in the Metropolitan Transportation Plan are met within the region. So yeah, if anybody has any thoughts on those as well, workshopping them, expanding them, going off them.
And I do want to take just a moment and expand on one of them. So Elliot mentioned our Vision Zero efforts. We as a region adopted a Vision Zero goal back in September of last year. And that goal is to eliminate all roadway fatalities and serious injuries by 2060. We are hoping, of course, to beat that goal by quite a bit, but it's challenging in a region with aging infrastructure. And active transportation is key for that in two ways. The first is, with the number of vehicles on the road, it's extremely difficult to reduce the number of serious injuries. And so reducing the total number of vehicle miles traveled is one of the best ways to reduce the exposure to roadway threats that we have. And then the other, of course, is to provide safe facilities for pedestrians and cyclists so that they are at less risk and, hopefully eliminate vulnerable roadway user deaths early.
I have a question about that for about Vision Zero or I believe the state has recently given towns the opportunity to implement automated enforcement for stop signs, for red lights. Is there a role, or would there be a role, or could the COG or will COGs be kind of advocating for that and kind of providing guidance to towns on that subject?
Yes, it is a great question, and we just got some answers to this last week. And so the Office of the State Traffic Administrator is finalizing the guidelines for that program now. I believe they're required to do so by January 1st, but are on track to beat that deadline. As soon as they do, that process is a bit difficult for towns. It's a time and energy intensive process. And so we know that especially among the smaller towns, but even the bigger cities across the state may have a hard time putting together the resources to move that forward. And so at least here at NVCOG, and I imagine our counterparts will probably be doing the same, we'll be preparing materials to share with our towns. We'll be able to do some of the public engagement work on their behalf. We as staff all agree that automated enforcement is a key piece of achieving Vision Zero. And our policy board has agreed with that, and we're advocates for automated enforcement right from the beginning. And so we'll be working very closely with all of our member communities who have an interest in and have the public support to install automated enforcement devices to do so.
Yeah, having the public support is going to be the big thing there.
For sure. Yeah, and so part of the reason it's such a difficult process for towns is to reduce the chance that anything, the cameras get abused, right? I think
right.
Anybody who's lived outside of Connecticut and in a state that has cameras has seen some of the controversy around them. You know, there's places that have used them in, I don't want to say like necessarily a bad way, but in ways that are less focused on enhancing safety and more on generating revenue or targeting certain populations, or, you know, so the legislature and now OSTA have put in requirements to make sure that that does not happen here, which is obviously a positive. And so that's part of why the process for towns is so difficult. But I agree, we need to make sure that the public understands why those rules are in place, why these cameras are essential for ending fatalities and serious injuries on our roads. And, you know, again, right, this is part of where having advocacy organizations and groups of people supporting these types of policies is such an important part of advancing these goals within the region.
Right. I mean, in some ways they're kind of a blunt instrument, but they're very effective. You know, obviously we want to be thinking about ways to slow people down and get them to, you know, and have our roadways be safer without these kinds of things too. But they, you know, but they are obviously effective. So.
For sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, from the DOT's perspective, like, it's definitely gonna be a safety focused element for where those go in. And like Rich said, it's gonna be, you know, a process to make sure that, you know, we're not, you know, or these things aren't being targeted at certain, you know, low income individuals or anything like that. And then you hit the nail on the head, right? So these are a tool, but it's not necessarily, you know, it's not a tool in lieu of, you know, potential upgrades or you know, infrastructure changes, right? So if something could be avoided by doing some infrastructure improvements, like, you know, we do want to focus on those rather than, you know, necessarily using these cameras, which, you know, again, I would constitute that maybe as more of income or revenue generating type of situation.
Yeah. Kevin, in Cheshire, for example, I mean, we have, I mean, the two main state routes through town are you know, obviously our busiest roads, Route 10 north to south, and then 6870 kind of going east west. Route 10 is a pretty wide road. There's plenty of room on the sides for cycle tracks. You know, they're recently repaved, and there was, you know, there's wider margins on the sides, as there, I know that's supposed to be the case with complete streets policy that DOT has now. In some places that isn't the case, though, I guess, because the roadway is just not wide enough. But on 6870, which is a much narrower state route where there really isn't any kind of area on the side, even if you were to have the new kind of margins on the side, I'm not sure it's possible because the roadway is kind of narrow. In those cases, what is the DOT? Is there a plan the DOT has to sort of make those routes more sort of pedestrian and bike friendly? Is there anything you guys have in the works in that regard?
I'd have to get back to you on that specific instance, but I mean, yeah, I mean, our policy going forward is to look at you know, every opportunity that we can, right? So sometimes we run into snags, whether it's geometrics or right of way or things like that. But the only way that I believe that we could even get a design exception is from the chief engineer. So it's going all the way up to the top. So it's more work on our end to, you know, kind of get that approval if we can't do something. But yeah, I mean, we are, right? And then, I mean, there's, you know, there's kind of obviously a long history of, you know, if we put something in, you know, it falls kind of back on the town, right, for maintenance and things like that. So, I mean, even that wider stretch, like if there's logical termini, then, you know, you could go out tomorrow, well, I won't say tomorrow, but, you know, if you get an encroachment permit, you can go out and put the, you know, you can put markings in and, you know, and get that on the road, and you know, you just maintain those markings. But, so we're definitely trying. We're not perfect, but we're trying to be more flexible. You know, that you're talking about with the VIP program. You know, yeah, we're trying to reduce our lane width down to 11 any way we can, everywhere we can across the entire state, to make more room and shoulder, and to increase that width for, at least some more comfort for non-motorized users.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm sure many of us probably agree that the real opportunity to get more people using active transportation is to have infrastructure on state routes that is actually, makes it safe to do so, especially with e-bikes and, scooters and things like that, that people are, starting to use more. I mean, we see what's happened with the e-bike rebate program. Is probably a lot more demand than people kind of initially thought. So it's kind of the usual case where it's the chicken and egg kind of scenario here.
Yeah, I mean, for the specific case, though, I mean, we'd be happy to, I don't know if you've worked with NVCOG before on this, but we can sit down, have kind of a sidebar meeting at some point to go over.
I'm sure that with the state routes, I'm sure it's similar throughout the valley as far as the other towns. I'm sure have the same concern that I'm kind of expressing with Cheshire. So
absolutely. I mean, it's just product of I'll say being developed or first in the United States, or one of the first, right? Like a lot of narrow roads, we weren't really planning. Wasn't a big plan when the horse and buggies were out there.
Right.
Yeah, and to that point, every one of our towns, at least one of their main commercial streets is a state road.
Right.
So, the destinations, like I said, are really mostly located along the state routes.
Yeah.
I think before we move on from talking about the goals, I want to mention some of the education piece to it. And so Amy specifically, we've been talking about some of the materials, especially for younger children, that we want to make sure get included in this, advocating for, cycling education, either through schools or through non-school related programs. But you want to add anything to that?
Well, there's definitely education for kids for sure, because you want to teach them benefits of active transportation, getting out there and biking and walking and things, but also for adults as well. Just letting them know about any infrastructure changes that you're going to make, letting them know about any trails you're building, things like that, just for people to have that awareness, and for people to remember some of the etiquette and usage of trails and other amenities. I'm thinking about crossings, which we do a little campaign with the Farmington Valley Trails Council over trail crossing, using the RRFBs and things like that. So you can certainly go up the age ladder with education, but kids for sure, and they influence their families and parents as well when you engage kids.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's make sure we talk about every age group in there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anna.
So to jump to the other end of the age spectrum, with AARP and the older adult population, I think, something I'm hearing that kind of underpins all of these goals is just communication. So many of our members don't necessarily think that the trails are for them. They sort of hear, there are plenty of older adults who enjoy biking, but there's also a preference around, slower forms of active transportation. And people don't necessarily understand that the Greenway trails are for them as walkers. They're not sure how to get to them. They don't understand any of the changes, kind of going on in the community around accessing the trails. It's really, really easy to go online and figure out how to drive someplace. It's a lot less easy to go online and figure out how to take a nice walk. I think even going back to a point that Kevin made earlier, if there's any section of a journey that feels unsafe, the whole journey feels unsafe, right? Like if you can't leave your house and feel protected on, you know, a route that you're taking, you know, I kind of say this from the older adult perspective, but also like, you know, I'm a mom with a cargo bike, and there are, you know, 90% of the trips that I think of taking, I don't, because there's, you know, if there's half a mile stretch where I think me and my kids are going to get killed, I don't do that route. Right. So I think, you know, and I have a relatively aggressive comfort level compared to some people. But I think that's important to keep in mind too, that, you know, so many journeys are spoiled by, you know, one or two parts that feel really dangerous for folks.
Yeah, that's a great point.
All right, I feel like we can move on from the goals a little bit, and I feel like we kind of, you think we feel like we got the second one? What should active transportation look like?
I think so, unless anybody has,
That,
you know,
yeah.
right, the vision here is, I think is one of the more important parts. We want to make sure that it's clear why we're doing this, what we're doing. And so if anybody has any additional comments around the overall vision for what the plan should include, what it should be like, what active transportation in the region should look like.
I mean, I think everybody's really been talking about making connections and not really
Yeah.
focusing necessarily on, you know, the trails necessarily, but, you know, they are the center point, or they will be someday. I think it's just important to realize that, you know, the Naugatuck River Greenway, at least, it's gonna be a long time before it's completed. You know, there's gonna be sections between towns maybe, you know, in the next few years, but, you know, understanding how people can still use that infrastructure with big gaps, I think will be important as well. So sort of laying out, you know, on-road routes as well, I think will really help people be able to use that more in the meantime.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, I think that ties into the comment about connecting the existing pieces of the greenways with transit too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think as far as what it should look like a real option. You know, it should look like, you know, we should give, people should feel like they don't necessarily have to take a car everywhere. You know, so, you know, however we kind of get there, obviously the connections are important. You know, but the more we can sort of make it look like and actually be a real option, then it's a, you know, self-fulfilling prophecy kind of thing.
Sure. Absolutely.
I think we do have a region that, you know, a lot of our downtowns are really close to each other. If you look at a map, there's just no way to get from A to B, you know, so it could be a real option in this region.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we can move on from some of the goals and visionary things and kind of move on to what are ways to ensure that these goals are implementable, and which we touched on a little bit. And also, what are some of the ways that we can engage stakeholders, the public and elected officials? Because as I think a lot of people were kind of saying that if there's no political will, if we can't kind of like mobilize the community and get people engaged and educated about this kind of thing, no meaningful change is really going to happen. So.
I mean, I think as far as engaging elected officials, you know, having some experience with this, I think you know, they have to hear it from the people. They have to hear the demand, you know, from the people as far as, you know, we want to be able to travel around our community and feel safe. We want to, you know, and that's the case, you know, in the sort of broader context, and however they're traveling around the community, whether it's by car or walking or on a bike or whatever. You know, so this is it may be, you know, it's an active transportation plan, but it also is, this is a plan that's going to make everything safer, right? That's part of the idea. You know, but speeding and you know, the way that it just seems like the people travel around by car is just sort of gets that the habits seem to get worse and worse is, you know, what I hear from people a lot, and I know that our police chief hears a lot, and our town manager hears a lot, You know, so, and I think they just need to hear that more. And I think they also need to, I mean, elected officials need to see that there's a group of people in their community that, you know, that feels that this is really important. So however we can encourage that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal advocacy group, but, you know, but however we can encourage more of the public to make this an issue for them, whether it's in elections or just as a reason to go, you know, talk to their elected officials at a meeting or whatever. You know, we just need to make this more of an issue.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't even think about it. You know, they're used to, they get in their car and they go where they're going, and nobody thinks about the fact that there isn't an alternative.
Right. There's, I mean, certainly people that have kids that, you know, want to get their kids safe to school. It's a big issue. And I think, you know, maybe more and more it's for people, in the older end of the spectrum too, that, you know, want to, you know, continue to live in their community and have, you know, have it be accessible. And, you know, and as they get older, maybe they can't drive or whatever the case may be, they want options to get around. And, you know, so it isn't, so it's an issue for everybody. And so theoretically, it shouldn't be that hard to make it more top of mind. But like I said, it's, you know, everyone just kind of gets in their car and goes about their day, and they make it home. Everything's fine, I guess. But certainly the you know, the speeding and there's just the sort of poor behavior of drivers and stuff it's becoming more and more of a problem, and it's becoming more and more of an issue, I think. So, and like I said, anything we can do to kind of move that along and talk about this within that context of safety for all users, it's probably going to help us.
So I think, you know, one of the things that, like Kevin was saying, right, we built our cities long before any of this was an issue. And so, you know, we don't necessarily have space or the layout that is designed for this kind of thing, which can make it a little harder to implement some of these goals without being able to impact what it feels like or is how capable or how possible it is to drive, especially in our downtown areas. And I know that, you know, that always becomes one of the biggest impediments to implementation. Is it's easy to talk about how important bike lanes are until you try and take away parking space. And, you know, so I think we saw that with Waterbury and Bristol did the Complete Streets Academy. Both had projects that didn't even necessarily take away parking spaces, but just, you know, block off places where people already shouldn't have been parking. And there was some pushback on that alone. And so, you know, just as we're talking about ways to move some of this forward, I think that's one of the things we need to really think about is, you know, responding to those concerns that parking, especially in our downtown areas, is the top priority, and being able to change that mindset. And I don't know that I have a good answer for how to go about that, but I think right off the bat, that's going to be the number one issue we face as we make recommendations.
I think there's some pretty good data that active transportation, you know, contributes to, you know, supporting small businesses. When you have, especially when you have in the valley, like Aaron was saying, the towns are relatively close together. You have a lot of nice little downtown areas with small businesses that, you know, I guess engaging that community or those communities, the business community, is probably one way we want to consider going about this too.
For sure. Yeah, right, those small businesses tend to be the ones who are the most concerned about loss of parking spaces, but they are also the ones who can benefit the
Right.
most from these changes.
Right.
And that's another opportunity for education and outreach, is to engage those businesses in the area where you're planning to do something and helping them understand, they're like, when people want to build, they're building out the Farmington Valley Trail, people would be like, oh, I don't want that in my yard. I don't want that near my yard. And then when they found out that it actually increases their property value and it makes their property more desirable. So trying to educate people about how encouraging active transportation and having these things benefits the whole community, including that business, might be helpful in stemming that, because people don't like change. If you show up and you take away a spot they're used to having, and they don't have any real warning that it's coming, or they don't feel like they were consulted, people just put up those defenses right away. So engaging them early on in the process could maybe help.
And killing the notion that one spot in front of a building, if that went away, that nobody would come to your building anymore. I mean, that's when do you ever get to park directly in front of the spot, like the place you're trying to go? So you're much better off slowing down traffic, adding alternative modes, getting more eyes on your place of business. Far more productive from a marketing standpoint than the one single spot that's in front of your place, generally speaking.
For sure. Yeah, I think we did have some success with demonstration projects, even if they were challenging to implement and received with mixed reviews. I think it's helpful to show what's possible, and maybe hard for us to do, as part of this plan, but I think it's certainly worth something worth talking about.
I guess I'll give one more opportunity if there's any last thoughts or ideas people wanted to say related to any of these questions, related to anything else related to the project going forward. So yeah, let's give a few seconds if anybody wants to chime in about anything. I am hearing nothing. Thank you everybody so much for your time. I feel like this was a great meeting. We got a lot of valuable feedback from people who are actually working kind of these different facets of active transportation. We are hoping to meet, like I said, bi-monthly, so hopefully that would be January then, right? And hopefully we'll have some more updates on some of the engagement and existing conditions process, and we will try to keep everybody here updated along the way as everything's going on.
Yeah, again, thank you all for coming, for joining us this morning. And while these meetings are hopefully where we'll have a lot of this discussion, please contact Elliot in between with thoughts, with questions, with ideas. Hopefully the support for this spreads outside of this room and outside of these meetings. But anything you have that you think may be valuable for us, or any ideas, we certainly would love to hear at any time.
Absolutely.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well then we look forward to seeing everybody again soon.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for your time this morning.
Okay, bye.
Great job, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.